Book 4, Chapter 2 of the Brothers Karamazov. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Father Ziley of Detroit.
The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Translated by Constance Garnett. Book 4, Chapter 2, At His Father's.
First of all, Alyosha went to his father. On the way he remembered that his father had insisted the day before that he should come without his brother Ivan seeing him. Why so? Alyosha wondered suddenly. Even if my father has something to say to me alone, why should I go in unseen? Most likely in his excitement yesterday he meant to say something different, he decided. Yet he was very glad when Marfa Ignatyevna, who opened the garden gate to him, Grigory, it appeared, was ill in bed in the lodge, told him in answer to his question that Ivan Fyodorovitch had gone out 2 hours ago. "And my father?" "He is up taking his coffee," Marfa answered somewhat dryly. Alyosha went in. The old man was sitting alone at the table, wearing slippers and a little old overcoat. He was amusing himself by looking through some accounts, rather inattentively, however. He was quite alone in the house, for Smerdyakov, too, had gone out marketing. Though he had gone up early and was trying to put a bold face on it, he looked tired and weak. His forehead, upon which huge purple bruises had come out during the night, was bandaged with a red handkerchief. His nose, too, was swollen terribly in the night, and some smaller bruises covered it in patches, giving his whole face a peculiarly spiteful and irritable look. The old man was aware of this, and turned a hostile glance on Alyosha as he came in. "The coffee is cold," he cried harshly. "I won't offer you any. I've ordered nothing but a Lenten fish soup today, and I don't invite anyone to share it. Why have you come?" "To find out how you are," said Alyosha. "Yes. Besides, I told you to come yesterday. It's all of no consequence. You need not have troubled. But I knew you'd come poking in directly." He said this with almost hostile feeling. At the same time, he got up and looked anxiously in the looking-glass, perhaps for the 40th time that morning, at his nose. He began, too, binding his red handkerchief more becomingly on his forehead. "Red's better. It's just like the hospital in a white one," he observed sententiously. "Well, how are things over there? How is your elder?" "He is very bad. He may die today," answered Alyosha. But his father had not listened, and had forgotten his own question at once. "Ivan's gone out," he said suddenly. "He is doing his utmost to carry off Mitya's betrothed. That's what he is staying here for," he added maliciously, and twisting his mouth, looked at Alyosha. "Surely he did not tell you so?" asked Alyosha. "Yes, he did, long ago. Would you believe it? He told me 3 weeks ago. You don't suppose he, too, came to murder me, do you? He must have had some object in coming." "What do you mean? Why do you say such things?" said Alyosha, troubled. "He doesn't ask for money, it's true, but yet he won't get a farthing from me. I intend living as long as possible, you may as well know, my dear Alexey Fyodorovitch, and so I need every farthing, and the longer I live, the more I shall need it," he continued, pacing from one corner of the room to the other, keeping his hands in the pockets of his long greasy overcoat made of yellow cotton material. "I can still pass for a man at 55, but I want to pass for one for another 20 years. As I get older, you know, I shan't be a pretty object. The wenches won't come to me of their own accord, so I shall want my money. So I am saving up more and more, simply for myself, my dear son Alexey Fyodorovitch, you may as well know, for I mean to go on in my sins to the end, let me tell you. For sin is sweet. All abuse it, but all men live in it. Only others do it on the sly, and I openly. And so all the other sinners fall upon me for being so simple. And your paradise, Alexey Fyodorovitch, is not to my taste, let me tell you that. and it's not the proper place for a gentleman, your paradise, even if it exists. I believe that I fall asleep and don't wake up again, and that's all. You can pray for my soul if you like, and if you don't want to, don't, damn you. That's my philosophy. Ivan talked well here yesterday, though we were all drunk. Ivan is a conceited coxcomb, but he has no particular learning, nor education either. He sits silent and smiles at one without speaking. That's what pulls him through. Alyosha listened to him in silence. Why won't he talk to me? If he does speak, he gives himself airs. Your Ivan is a scoundrel, and I'll marry Grushenka in a minute if I want to. For if you've money, Alexei Fyodorovitch, you have only to want a thing and you can have it. That's what Ivan is afraid of. He is on the watch to prevent me getting married, and that's why he is egging on Mitya to marry Grushenka himself. He hopes to keep me from Grushenka by that, as though I should leave him my money if I don't marry her. Besides, if Mitya marries Grushenka, Ivan will carry off his rich betrothed. That's what he's reckoning on. He is a scoundrel, your Ivan. How cross you are. It's because of yesterday. You had better lie down, said Alyosha. There, you say that, the old man observed suddenly, as though it had struck him for the first time. And I'm not angry with you. But if Ivan said it, I should be angry with him. It is only with you I have good moments, else you know I am an ill-natured man. You are not ill-natured, but distorted, said Alyosha with a smile. Listen, I meant this morning to get that ruffian Mitya locked up, and I don't know now what I shall decide about it. Of course, in these fashionable days, fathers and mothers are looked upon as a prejudice. But even now the law does not allow you to drag your old father about by the hair, to kick him in the face in his own house, and brag of murdering him outright, all in the presence of witnesses. If I liked, I could crush him, and could have him locked up at once for what he did yesterday. Then you don't mean to take proceedings? Ivan has dissuaded me. I shouldn't care about Ivan, but there's another thing. And bending down to Alyosha, he went on in a confidential half-whisper. If I send the ruffian to prison, she'll hear of it, and run to see him at once. But if she hears that he has beaten me, a weak old man within an inch of my life, she may give him up and come to me. For that's her way, everything by contraries. I know her through and through. Won't you have a drop of brandy? Take some cold coffee, and I'll pour a quarter of a glass of brandy into it. It's delicious, my boy. No, thank you. I'll take that roll with me if I may, said Alyosha, and taking a halfpenny French roll, he put it in the pocket of his cassock. And you'd better not have brandy either, he suggested apprehensively, looking into the old man's face. You are quite right. It irritates my nerves instead of soothing them. Only one little glass. I'll get it out of the cupboard. He unlocked the cupboard, poured out a glass, drank it, then locked the cupboard and put the key back in his pocket. That's enough. One glass won't kill me. You see you are in a better humor now, said Alyosha, smiling. I love you even without the brandy. But with scoundrels, I am a scoundrel. Ivan is not going to Chermashnya. Why is that? He wants to spy how much I give Grushenka if she comes. They are all scoundrels. But I don't recognize Ivan. I don't know him at all. Where does he come from? He is not one of us in soul, as though I'd leave him anything. I shan't leave a will at all, you may as well know. And I'll crush Mitya like a beetle. I squash black beetles at night with my slipper. They squelch when you tread on them. And your Mitya will squelch too. Your Mitya, for you love him. Yes, you love him, and I am not afraid of your loving him. But if Ivan loved him, I should be afraid for myself at his loving him. But Ivan loves nobody. Ivan is not one of us. People like Ivan are not our sort, my boy. They are like a cloud of dust. When the wind blows, the dust will be gone. I had a silly idea in my head when I told you to come today. I wanted to find out from you about Mitya. If I were to hand him over 1,000 or maybe 2 now, would the beggarly wretch agree to take himself off altogether for 5 years, or better still, 35, and without Grushenka, and give her up once for all, eh? I'll ask him, muttered Alyosha. If you would give him 3,000, perhaps he... That's nonsense. You needn't ask him now. No need. I've changed my mind. It was a nonsensical idea of mine. I won't give him anything, not a penny. I want my money myself, cried the old man, waving his hand. I'll crush him like a beetle without it. Don't say anything to him, or else he will begin hoping. There's nothing for you to do here. You needn't stay. Is that betrothed of his, Katerina Ivanovna, whom he has kept so carefully hidden from me all this time, going to marry him or not? You went to see her yesterday, I believe. Nothing will induce her to abandon him. There, you see how dearly these fine young ladies love a rake and a scoundrel. They are poor creatures, I tell you, those pale young ladies, very different from... if I had his youth and the looks I had then, for I was a better looking than he at 28, I'd have been a conquering hero just as he is. He is a low cad. But he shan't have Grushenka anyway. He shan't. I'll crush him. His anger had returned with the last words. You can go. There's nothing for you to do here today, he snapped harshly. Alyosha went up to say goodbye to him and kissed him on the shoulder. What's that for? The old man was a little surprised. We shall see each other again, or do you think we shan't? Not at all. I didn't mean anything. Nor did I. I did not mean anything, said the old man, looking at him. Listen, listen, he shouted after him. Make haste and come again, and I'll have a fish soup for you, a fine one, not like today. Be sure to come. Come tomorrow, do you hear? Tomorrow. And as soon as Alyosha had gone out of the door, he went to the cupboard again and poured out another half-glass. I won't have more, he muttered, clearing his throat. And again he locked the cupboard and put the key in his pocket. Then he went into his bedroom, lay down on the bed, exhausted, and in 1 minute he was asleep. End of Chapter 2 of Book 4. Recording by Father Ziley of Detroit, Michigan.
Book 4, Chapter 3 of the Brothers Karamazov. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ted Nugent. The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoyevsky. Translated by Constance, Garnett. Book 4, Chapter 3, A Meeting with the Schoolboys. Thank goodness he did not ask me about Grushenka, thought Alyosha, as he left his father's house and turned towards Madame Holocaust. Or I might have had to tell him of my meeting with Grushenka yesterday. Alyosha felt painfully that since yesterday both combatants had renewed their energies, and that their hearts had grown hard again. Father is spiteful and angry. He's made some plan and will stick to it. And what of Dmitri? He too will be harder than yesterday. He too must be spiteful and angry, and he too, no doubt, has made some plan. Oh, I must succeed in fighting him today, whatever happens. But Alyosha had not long to meditate. An incident occurred on the road which, though apparently of little consequence, made a great impression on him. Just after he had crossed the square and turned the corner coming out into Mikhailovsky Street, which is divided by a small ditch from the High Street. Our whole town is intersected by ditches. He saw a group of schoolboys between the ages of 9 and 12 at the bridge. They were going home from school, some with their bags on their shoulders, others with leather satchels slung across them, some in short jackets, others in little overcoats. Some even had those high boots with creases round the ankles, such as little boys spoilt by rich fathers love to wear. The whole group was talking eagerly about something, apparently holding a council. Alyosha had never, from his Moscow days, been able to pass children without taking notice of them. And although he was particularly fond of children of 3 or thereabouts, he liked schoolboys of 10 and 11 too. And so, anxious as he was today, he wanted at once to turn aside to talk to them. He looked into their excited, rosy faces and noticed at once that all the boys had stones in their hands. Behind the ditch, some 30 paces away, there was another schoolboy standing by a fence. He, too, had a satchel at his side. He was about 10 years old, pale, delicate-looking, and with sparkling black eyes. He kept an attentive and anxious watch on the other 6, obviously his schoolfellows, with whom he had just come out of school, but with whom he had evidently had a feud. Alyosha went up, and, addressing a fair, curly-headed, rosy boy in a black jacket, observed, "When I used to wear a satchel like yours, I always used to carry it on my left side, so as to have my right hand free. But you've got yours on your right side, so it will be awkward for you to get at it." Alyosha had no art or premeditation in beginning with this practical remark. But it is the only way for a grown-up person to get at once into confidential relations with a child, or still more with a group of children. One must begin in a serious, business-like way, so as to be on a perfectly equal footing. Alyosha understood it by instinct. "But he is left-handed," another, a fine, healthy-looking boy of 11, answered promptly. All the others stared at Alyosha. "He even throws stones with his left hand," observed a third. At that instant, a stone flew into the group, but only just grazed the left-handed boy, though it was well and vigorously thrown by the boy standing on the other side of the ditch. "Give it him! Hit him back, Smurov!" they all shouted. But Smurov, the left-handed boy, needed no telling, and at once revenged himself. He threw a stone, but it missed the boy and hit the ground. The boy on the other side of the ditch, the pocket of whose coat was visibly bulging with stones, flung another stone at the group. This time it flew straight at Alyosha and hit him painfully on the shoulder. "He aimed it at you. He meant it for you. You are Karamazov, Karamazov!" The boy shouted, laughing. "Come, all throw at him at once!" And 6 stones flew at the boy. One struck the boy on the head, and he fell down, but at once leapt up and began ferociously returning their fire. Both sides threw stones incessantly. Many of the group had their pockets full too. "What are you about? Aren't you ashamed? 6 against 1. Why, you will kill him!" cried Alyosha. He ran forward and met the flying stones to screen the solitary boy. 3 or 4 ceased throwing for a minute. "He began first," cried the boy in a red shirt in an angry, childish voice. "He's a beast. He stabbed Krasotkin in class the other day with a penknife. It bled. Krasotkin wouldn't tell tales, but he must be thrashed." "But what for? I suppose you tease him." "There, he sent the stone in your back again. He knows you," cried the children. "It's you he's throwing at now, not us. Come, all of you, at him again. Don't miss Smurov." And again a fire of stones, and a very vicious one, began. The boy on the other side of the ditch was hit in the chest. He screamed, began to cry, and ran away uphill towards Mikhailovsky Street. They all shouted, "Aha! He's funken! He's running away! Wisp of tow!" "You don't know what a beast he is, Karamazov. Killing is too good for him," said the boy in the jacket, with flashing eyes. He seemed to be the eldest. "What's wrong with him?" asked Alyosha. "Is he a telltale or what?" The boys looked at one another as though derisively. "Are you going that way to Mikhailovsky?" the same boy went on. "Patch him up. You see, he stopped again. He is waiting and looking at you. He is looking at you," the other boys chimed in. "You ask him, does he like a disheveled wisp of tow? Do you hear? Ask him that." There was a general burst of laughter. Alyosha looked at them, and they at him. "Don't go near him, he will hurt you," cried Smurov in a warning voice. "I shan't ask him about the wisp of tow, for I expect you tease him with that question somehow. But I will find out from him why you hate him so." "Find out then, find out!" cried the boys, laughing. Alyosha crossed the bridge and walked uphill by the fence, straight towards the boy. "You'd better look out," the boys called after him. "He won't be afraid of you. He will stab you in a minute, on the sly, as he did Krasotkin." The boy waited for him without budging. Coming up to him, Alyosha saw facing him a child of about 9 years old. He was an undersized, weakly boy with a thin, pale face, with large, dark eyes that gazed at him vindictively. He was dressed in a rather shabby old overcoat, which he has monstrously outgrown. His bare arms stuck out beyond his sleeves. There was a large patch on the right knee of his trousers, and in his right boot, just at the toe, there was a big hole in the leather, carefully blackened with ink. Both the pockets of his greatcoat were weighed down with stones. Alyosha stopped 2 steps in front of him, looking inquiringly at him. The boy, seeing at once from Alyosha's eyes that he wouldn't beat him, became less defiant, and addressed him first. "I'm alone, and there are 6 of them. I'll beat them all alone," he said suddenly, with flashing eyes. "I think one of the stones must have hurt you badly," observed Alyosha. "But I hit Smurov on the head," cried the boy. "They told me that you know me and that you threw a stone at me on purpose," said Alyosha. The boy looked darkly at him. "I don't know you. Do you know me?" Alyosha continued. "Let me alone!" the boy cried irritably, but he did not move, as though he were expecting something. And again there was a vindictive light in his eyes. "Very well, I'm going," said Alyosha. "Only I don't know you, and I don't tease you. They told me how they tease you, but I don't want to tease you. Goodbye." "Monk in silk trousers!" cried the boy, following Alyosha with the same vindictive and defiant expression. And he threw himself into an attitude of defense, feeling sure that now Alyosha would fall upon him. But Alyosha turned, looked at him, and walked away. He had not gone 3 steps before the biggest stone the boy had in his pocket hit him a painful blow in the back. "So we'll hit the man from behind. They tell the truth then when they say that you attack on the sly," said Alyosha, turning round again. This time the boy threw a stone savagely right into Alyosha's face, but Alyosha just had time to guard himself, and the stone struck him on the elbow. "Aren't you ashamed? What have I done to you?" he cried. The boy waited in silent defiance, certain that now Alyosha would attack him. Seeing that even now he would not. His rage was like a little wild beast's. He flew at Alyosha himself, and before Alyosha had time to move, the spiteful giant had seized his left hand with both of his and bit his middle finger. He fixed his teeth in it, and it was 10 seconds before he let go. Alyosha cried out with pain and pulled his finger away with all his might. The child let go at last and retreated to his former distance. Alyosha's finger had been badly bitten to the bone, close to the nail. It began to bleed. Alyosha took out his handkerchief and bound it tightly round his injured hand. He was a full minute bandaging it. The boy stood, waiting all the time. At last, Alyosha raised his gentle eyes and looked at him. "Very well," he said. "You see how badly you've bitten me? That's enough, isn't it? Now tell me, what have I done to you?" The boy stared in amazement. "Though I don't know you, and it's the first time I've seen you," Alyosha went on with the same serenity, "yet I must have done something to you. You wouldn't have hurt me like this for nothing. So, what have I done? How have I wronged you? Tell me." Instead of answering, the boy broke into a loud, tearful wail and ran away. Alyosha walked slowly after him towards Mikhailovsky Street, and for a long time he saw the child running in the distance as fast as ever, not turning his head, and no doubt still keeping up his tearful wail. He made up his mind to find him out as soon as he had time, and to solve this mystery. Just now he had not the time. End chapter 3 of book 4.
Section 28, Book 4, Chapter 4, of the Brothers Karamazov. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Father Ziley of Detroit. The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoyevsky. Translated by Constance Garnett. Book 4, Chapter 4, At the Holocaust. Alyosha soon reached Madame Holokov's house, a handsome stone house of 2 stories, one of the finest in our town. Though Madame Holokov spent most of her time in another province where she had an estate, or in Moscow where she had a house of her own, yet she had a house in our town too, inherited from her forefathers. The estate in our district was the largest of her 3 estates, yet she had been very little in our province before this time. She ran out to Alyosha in the hall. "Did you get my letter about the new miracle?" She spoke rapidly and nervously. "Yes." "Did you show it to everyone? He restored the son to his mother." "He is dying today," said Alyosha. "I have heard. I know. Oh, how I long to talk to you or someone about all this. No, to you. And how sorry I am I can't see him. The whole town is in excitement. They are all suspense. But now, do you know Katerina Ivanovna is here now?" "Ah, that's lucky," cried Alyosha. "Then I shall see her here. She told me yesterday to be sure to come and see her today." I know all. I've heard exactly what happened yesterday, and the atrocious behavior of that creature. C'est tragique. And if I'd been in her place, I don't know what I should have done. And your brother, Dmitri Fyodorovitch, what do you think of him? My goodness, Alexei Fyodorovitch, I'm forgetting. Only fancy, your brother is in there with her. Not that dreadful brother who was so shocking yesterday, but the other, Ivan Fyodorovitch. He is sitting with her talking. They are having a serious conversation. If you could only imagine what's passing between them now. It's awful, I tell you. It's lacerating. It's like some incredible tale of horror. They are ruining their lives for no reason anyone can see. They both recognize it and revel in it. I've been watching for you. I've been thirsting for you. It's too much for me. That's the worst of it. I'll tell you all about it presently, but now I must speak of something else, the most important thing. I had quite forgotten what's most important. Tell me, why has Lisa been in hysterics? As soon as she heard you were here, she began to be hysterical. Ma'am, it's you who are hysterical now, not I. Lisa's voice caroled through a tiny crack of the door at the side. Her voice sounded as though she wanted to laugh, but was doing her utmost to control it. Alyosha at once noticed the crack, and no doubt Lisa was peeping through it, but that he could not see. And no wonder, Lisa, no wonder. Your caprices will make me hysterical too. But she is so ill, Alexei Fyodorovitch. She has been so ill at night, feverish and moaning. I could hardly wait for the morning, and for the Herzenstube to come. He says that he can make nothing of it, that we must wait. Herzenstube always comes and says that he can make nothing of it. As soon as you approached the house, she screamed, fell into hysterics, and insisted on being wheeled back into this room here. Mamma, I didn't know he had come. It wasn't on his account I wanted to be wheeled into this room. That's not true, Lisa. Yulia ran to tell you that Alexei Fyodorovitch was coming. She was on the lookout for you. My darling mamma, it's not at all clever of you. But if you want to make up for it and say something very clever, dear mamma, you'd better tell our honored visitor, Alexei Fyodorovitch, that he has shown his want of wit by venturing to us after what happened yesterday, and although everyone is laughing at him. Lisa, you go too far. I declare I shall have to be severe. Who laughs at him? I am so glad he has come. I need him. I can't do without him. Oh, Alexei Fyodorovitch, I'm exceedingly unhappy. But what's the matter with you, mamma darling? Ah, your caprices, Lisa, your fidgetiness, your illness, that awful night of fever, that awful everlasting Herzenstube, everlasting, everlasting, that's the worst of it. Everything, in fact, everything, even that miracle, too. Oh, how it has upset me, how it has shattered me, that miracle, dear Alexei Fyodorovitch. And that tragedy in the drawing-room, it's more than I can bear, I warn you. I can't bear it. A comedy, perhaps, not a tragedy. Tell me, will Father Zosima live tomorrow, will he? Oh, my God, what is happening to me? Every minute I close my eyes and see that it's all nonsense, all nonsense. I should be very grateful, Alyosha interrupted suddenly, if you could give me a clean rag to bind up my finger with. I have heard it, and it's very painful. Alyosha unbound his bitten finger. The handkerchief was soaked with blood. Madame Holikov screamed and shut her eyes. Good heavens! What a wound! How awful! But as soon as Lisa saw Alyosha's finger through the crack, she flung the door wide open. Come here, she cried imperiously. No nonsense now. Good heavens! Why did you stand there saying nothing about it all this time? He might have bled to death, mamma. How did you do it? Water, water! You must wash it first of all. Simply hold it in cold water to stop the pain. And keep it there, keep it there. Make haste, mamma. Some water in a slop basin. But do make haste. She finished nervously. She was quite frightened at the sight of Alyosha's wound. Shouldn't we send for Herzenstube? Cried Madame Holikov. Mamma, you'll be the death of me. Your Herzenstube will come and say that he can make nothing of it. Water, water, mamma. For goodness sake, go yourself and hurry Yulia. She is such a slow coach, and never can come quickly. Make haste, mamma, or I shall die. Why, it's nothing much, cried Alyosha, frightened at this alarm. Yulia ran in with water, and Alyosha put his finger in it. Some lint, mamma, for mercy's sake, bring some lint. And that muddy caustic lotion for wounds. What's it called? We got some. You know where the bottle is, mamma. It's in your bedroom, in the right-hand cupboard. There's a big bottle of it there with the lint. I'll bring everything in a minute, Lisa, only don't scream and don't fuss. You see how bravely Alexei Fyodorovitch bears it. Where did you get such a dreadful wound, Alexei Fyodorovitch? Madame Holikov hastened away. This was all Lisa was waiting for. First of all, answer the question. Where did you get hurt like this? She asked Alyosha quickly. And then I'll talk to you about something quite different. Well? Instinctively feeling that the time of her mother's absence was precious for her, Alyosha hastened to tell her of his enigmatic meeting with the schoolboys in the fewest words possible. Lisa clasped her hands at his story. "How can you? And in that dress, too, associate with schoolboys!" she cried angrily, as though she had a right to control him. "You are nothing but a boy yourself, if you can do that. A perfect boy!" "But you must find out for me about that horrid boy and tell me all about it, for there's some mystery in it. Now for the second thing, but first a question. Does the pain prevent you talking about utterly unimportant things, but talking sensibly?" "Of course not, and I don't feel much pain now." "That's because your finger is in the water. It must be changed directly, for it will get warm in a minute. Yulia, bring some ice from the cellar, and another basin of water." Now she is gone, I can speak. "Will you give me the letter I sent you yesterday, dear Alexey Fyodorovitch? Be quick, for Mamma will be back in a minute, and I don't want—" "I haven't got the letter." "That's not true. You have. I knew you would say that. You've got it in that pocket. I've been regretting that joke all night. Give me back the letter at once. Give it me." "I've left it at home." "But you can't consider me as a child, a little girl, after that silly joke. I beg your pardon for that silliness, but you must bring me the letter if you really haven't got it. Bring it today. You must, you must." "Today I can't possibly, for I am going back to the monastery, and I shan't come and see you for the next 2 days, 3 or 4 perhaps, for Father Zosima—" "4 days? What nonsense! Listen, did you laugh at me very much?" "I didn't laugh at all." "Why not?" "Because I believed all you said." "You are insulting me." "Not at all. As soon as I read it, I thought that all that would come to pass, for as soon as Father Zosima dies, I am to leave the monastery. Then I shall go back and finish my studies, and when you reach the legal age, we will be married. I shall love you. Though I haven't had time to think about it, I believe I couldn't find a better wife than you, and Father Zosima tells me I must marry." "But I am a cripple, wheeled about in a chair," laughed Lisa, flushing crimson. "I'll wheel you about myself, but I'm sure you'll get well by then." "But you are mad," said Lisa nervously, "to make all this nonsense out of a joke. Here's Mamma, very apropos perhaps. Mamma, how slow you always are! How can you be so long? And here's Yulia with the ice." "Oh, Lisa, don't scream. Above all things, don't scream. That scream drives me— How can I help it when you put the lint in another place? I've been hunting and hunting. I do believe you did it on purpose." "But I couldn't tell that he would come with a bad finger, or else perhaps I might have done it on purpose. My darling Mamma, you begin to say really witty things." "Never mind my being witty, but I must say you show nice feeling for Alexey Fyodorovitch's sufferings. Oh, my dear Alexey Fyodorovitch, what's killing me is no one thing in particular, not Herzenstube, but everything together. That's what is too much for me." "That's enough, Mamma, enough about Herzenstube." Lisa laughed gaily. "Make haste with the lint and the lotion, Mamma." "That's simply Goulard's water, Alexey Fyodorovitch. I remember the name now, but it's a splendid lotion. Would you believe it, Mamma, on the way here he had a fight with the boys in the street, and it was a boy bit his finger. Isn't he a child himself? Is he fit to be married after that? For only fancy, he wants to be married, Mamma. Just think of him married. Wouldn't it be funny? Wouldn't it be awful?" And Lisa kept laughing, her thin, hysterical giggle, looking slyly at Alyosha. "But why married, Lisa? What makes you talk of such a thing? It's quite out of place, and perhaps the boy was rabid." "Why, Mamma, as though there were rabid boys!" "Why not, Lisa? As though I had said something stupid. Your boy might have been bitten by a mad dog, and he would become mad and bite anyone near him. How well she has bandaged it, Alexey Fyodorovitch. I couldn't have done it. Do you still feel the pain?" "It's nothing much now." "You don't feel afraid of water?" asked Lisa. "Come, that's enough, Lisa. Perhaps I really was rather too quick talking of the boy being rabid, and you pounced upon it at once. Katerina Ivanovna has only just heard that you are here, Alexei Fyodorovitch. She simply rushed at me, and she's dying to see you, dying." "Ah, Mama, go to them yourself. He can't go just now. He is in too much pain." "Not at all. I can go quite well," said Alyosha. "What? You are going away? Is that what you say?" "Well, when I've seen them, I'll come back here, and we can talk as much as you like. But I should like to see Katerina Ivanovna at once, for I am very anxious to be back at the monastery as soon as I can." "Mama, take him away quickly. Alexei Fyodorovitch, don't trouble to come and see me afterwards, but go straight back to your monastery, and a good riddance. I want to sleep. I didn't sleep all night." "Oh, Lisa, you are only making fun. But how I wish you would sleep," cried Madame Holikov. "I don't know what I've done. I'll stay another 3 minutes, 5 if you like," muttered Alyosha. "Even 5? Do take him away quickly, Mama. He is a monster." "Lisa, you are crazy. Let us go, Alexei Fyodorovitch. She is too capricious today. I'm afraid to cross her. Oh, the trouble one has with nervous girls. Perhaps she really will be able to sleep after seeing you. How quickly you have made her sleepy, and how fortunate it is." "Ah, Mama, how sweetly you talk. I must kiss you for it, Mama." "And I kiss you too, Lisa. Listen, Alexei Fyodorovitch." Madame Holikov began mysteriously and importantly, speaking in a rapid whisper. "I don't want to suggest anything. I don't want to lift the veil. You will see for yourself what's going on. It's appalling. It's the most fantastic farce. She loves your brother Ivan, and she is doing her utmost to persuade herself she loves your brother Dmitri. It's appalling. I'll go in with you, and if they don't turn me out, I'll stay to the end." End of Chapter 4 of Book 4. Recording by Father Ziley of Detroit.
Chapter 5 of the Brothers Karamazov. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Rachel Steele. The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Translated by Constance Garnett. Book 4, Chapter 5, A Laceration in the Drawing Room. But in the drawing room the conversation was already over. Katerina Ivanovna was greatly excited, though she looked resolute. At the moment Alyosha and Madame Holikov entered, Ivan Fyodorovitch stood up to take leave. His face was rather pale, and Alyosha looked at him anxiously. For this moment was to solve a doubt, a harassing enigma which had for some time haunted Alyosha. During the preceding month it had been several times suggested to him that his brother Ivan was in love with Katerina Ivanovna, and, what was more, that he meant to carry her off from Dmitri. Until quite lately the idea seemed to Alyosha monstrous, though it worried him extremely. He loved both his brothers and dreaded such rivalry between them. Meantime Dmitri had said outright on the previous day that he was glad that Ivan was his rival, and that it was a great assistance to him, Dmitri. In what way did it assist him? To marry Grushenka? But that Alyosha considered the worst thing possible. Besides all this, Alyosha had till the evening before implicitly believed that Katerina Ivanovna had a steadfast and passionate love for Dmitri. But he had only believed it till the evening before. He had fancied, too, that she was incapable of loving a man like Ivan, and that she did love Dmitri, and loved him just as he was, in spite of all the strangeness of such a passion. But during yesterday's scene with Grushenka another idea had struck him. The word lacerating, which Madame Holikov had just uttered, almost made him start, because half waking up towards daybreak that night, he had cried out, "Laceration! Laceration!" probably applying it to his dream. He had been dreaming all night of the previous day's scene at Katerina Ivanovna's. Now Alyosha was impressed by Madame Holikov's blunt and persistent assertion that Katerina Ivanovna was in love with Ivan, and only deceived herself through some sort of pose, from self-laceration, and tortured herself by her pretended love for Dmitri from some fancied duty of gratitude. Yes, he thought, perhaps the whole truth lies in those words. But in that case, what was Ivan's position? Alyosha felt instinctively that a character like Katerina Ivanovna's must dominate, and she could only dominate someone like Dmitri, and never a man like Ivan, for Dmitri might at last submit to her domination, to his own happiness, which was what Alyosha would have desired. But Ivan, no. Ivan could not submit to her, and such submission would not give him happiness. Alyosha could not help believing that of Ivan, and now all these doubts and reflections flitted through his mind as he entered the drawing-room. Another idea, too, forced itself upon him. What if she loved neither of them, neither Ivan nor Dmitri? It must be noted that Alyosha felt, as it were, ashamed of his own thoughts, and blamed himself when they kept reoccurring to him during the last month. What do I know about love and woman, and how can I decide such questions? He thought reproachfully. After such doubts and surmises, and yet it was impossible not to think about it. He felt instinctively that this rivalry was of immense importance in his brothers' lives, and that a great deal depended upon it. "One reptile will devour the other," Ivan had pronounced the day before, speaking in anger of his father and Dmitri. So Ivan looked upon Dmitri as a reptile, and perhaps long done so. Was it perhaps since he had known Katerina Ivanovna? That phrase had, of course, escaped Ivan unawares yesterday, but that only made it more important. If he felt like that, what chance was there of peace? Were there not, on the contrary, new grounds for hatred and hostility in their family? And with which of them was Alyosha to sympathize? And what was he to wish for each of them? He loved them both. But what could he desire for each in the midst of these conflicting interests? He might go quite astray in this maze, and Alyosha's heart could not endure uncertainty, because his love was always of an active character. He was incapable of passive love. If he loved anyone, he set to work at once to help him, and to do so he must know what he was aiming at. He must know for certain what was best for each, and having ascertained this, it was natural for him to help them both. But instead of a definite aim, he found nothing but uncertainty and perplexity on all sides. It was lacerating, as was said just now, but what could he understand even in this laceration? He did not understand the first word in this perplexing maze. Seeing Alyosha, Katerina Ivanovna said quickly and joyfully to Ivan, who had already got up to go, "A minute! Stay another minute! I want to hear the opinion of this person here, whom I trust absolutely. Don't go away," she added, addressing Madame Holikov. She made Alyosha sit down beside her, and Madame Holikov sat opposite by Ivan. "You are all my friends here, all I have in the world, dear friends," she warmly, in a voice which quivered with genuine tears of suffering, and Alyosha's heart warmed to her at once. "You, Alexey Fyodorovitch, were witness yesterday of that abominable scene, and saw what I did. You did not see it, Ivan Fyodorovitch. He did. What he thought of me yesterday, I don't know. I only know one thing, that if it were repeated today, this minute, I should express the same feelings again as yesterday. The same feelings, the same words, the same actions. You remember my actions, Alexey Fyodorovitch. You checked me in one of them." As she said that, she flushed, and her eyes shone. "I must tell you that I can't get over it. Listen, Alexey Fyodorovitch. I don't even know whether I still love him. I feel pity for him, and that is a poor sign of love. If I loved him, if I still loved him, perhaps I wouldn't be sorry for him now, but should hate him." Her voice quivered, and tears glittered in her eyelashes. Alyosha shuddered inwardly. "That girl is truthful and sincere," he thought, "and she does not love Dmitri any more." "That's true, that's true," cried Madame Hohlakov. "Wait, dear, I haven't told you the final decision I came to during the night. I feel that perhaps my decision is a terrible one, for me, but I foresee that nothing will induce me to change it. Nothing. It will be so all my life. My dear, kind, ever faithful and generous adviser, the one friend I have in the world, Ivan Fyodorovitch, with his deep insight into the heart, approves and commends my decision. He knows it." "Yes, I approve of it," Ivan assented, in a subdued but firm voice. "But I should like Alyosha too, Alexey Fyodorovitch, forgive my calling you simply Alyosha. I should like Alexey Fyodorovitch too to tell me before my two friends whether I am right. I feel instinctively that you, Alyosha, my dear brother, for you are a dear brother to me," she said again ecstatically, taking his cold hand in her hot one, "I foresee that your decision, your approval, will bring me peace in spite of all my sufferings. For after your words I shall be calm and submit. I feel that." "I don't know what you are asking me," said Alyosha, flushing. "I only know that I love you and at this moment wish for your happiness more than my own, but I know nothing about such affairs," something impelled him to add hurriedly. "In such affairs, Alexey Fyodorovitch, in such affairs, the chief thing is honor and duty, and something higher. I don't know what, but higher, perhaps, even than duty. I am conscious of this irresistible feeling in my heart, and it compels me irresistibly. But it may all be put in 2 words. I've already decided, even if he marries that creature," she began solemnly, "whom I never, never can forgive, even then I will not abandon him. Henceforth I will never, never abandon him," she cried, breaking into a sort of pale, hysterical ecstasy. "Not that I would run after him continually, get in his way and worry him. Oh, no! I will go away to another town, where you like, but I will watch over him all my life. I will watch over him all my life unceasingly. When he becomes unhappy with that woman, and that is bound to happen quite soon, let him come to me, and he will find a friend, a sister, only a sister, of course, and so forever, but he will learn at least that that sister is really his sister, who loves him and has sacrificed all her life to him. I will gain my point. I will insist on his knowing me, confiding entirely in me without reserve," she cried in a sort of frenzy. "I will be a god to whom he can pray, and that, at least, he owes me for his treachery, and for what I suffered yesterday through him, and let him see that all my life I will be true to him and the promise I gave him, in spite of his being untrue and betraying me. I will become nothing but a means for his happiness, or, how shall I say, an instrument, a machine for his happiness, and that for my whole life, my whole life. and that he may see that all his life. That's my decision. Ivan Fyodorovitch fully approves me." She was breathless. She had perhaps intended to express her idea with more dignity, art, and naturalness, but her speech was too hurried and crude. It was full of youthful impulsiveness. It betrayed that she was still smarting from yesterday's insult, and that her pride craved satisfaction. She felt this herself. Her face suddenly darkened. An unpleasant look came into her eyes. Alyosha at once saw it. "I've only expressed my own view," he said. "From anyone else this would have been affected and overstrained, but from you, no. Any other woman would have been wrong, but you are right. I don't know how to explain it, but I see that you are absolutely genuine, and therefore you are right." "But that's only for a moment. And what does this moment stand for? Nothing but yesterday's insult." Madame Holikov obviously had not intended to interfere, but she could not refrain from this very just comment. "Quite so, quite so," cried Ivan, with particular eagerness, obviously annoyed at being interrupted. "In anyone else this moment would be only due to yesterday's impression, and would be only a moment. But with Katerina Ivanovna's character, that moment will last all her life. What for anyone else would be only a promise is for her an everlasting, burdensome, grim perhaps, but unflagging duty, and she will be sustained by the feeling of this duty being fulfilled. Your life, Katerina Ivanovna, will henceforth be spent in painful brooding over your own feelings, your own heroism, and your own suffering. But in the end that suffering will be softened and will pass into sweet contemplation of the fulfillment of a bold and proud design. Yes, proud it certainly is, and desperate in any case, but a triumph for you, and the consciousness of it will at last be a source of complete satisfaction, and will make you resigned to everything else." This was unmistakably said with some malice and obviously with intention, even perhaps with no desire to conceal that he spoke ironically and with intention. "Oh dear, how mistaken it all is!" Madame Holikov cried again. "Alexey Fyodorovitch, you speak. I want dreadfully to know what you will say," cried Katerina Ivanovna, and burst into tears. Alyosha got up from the sofa. "It's nothing, nothing," she went on through her tears. "I'm upset. I didn't sleep last night. But by the side of two such friends as you and your brother, I still feel strong, for I know you two will never desert me. Unluckily, I'm obliged to return to Moscow, perhaps tomorrow, and leave you for a long time, and unluckily it's unavoidable," Ivan said suddenly. "Tomorrow? To Moscow?" Her face was suddenly contorted. But, dear me, how fortunate!" she cried in a voice suddenly changed. In one instant there was no trace left of her tears. She underwent an instantaneous transformation, which amazed Alyosha. Instead of a poor, insulted girl weeping in a sort of laceration, he saw a woman completely self-possessed and even exceedingly pleased, as though something agreeable had just happened. "Oh, not fortunate that I am losing you, of course not!" She collected herself suddenly, with a charming society smile. "Such a friend as you are could not suppose that. I am only too unhappy at losing you." She rushed impulsively at Ivan, and seizing both his hands, pressed them warmly. "But what is fortunate is that you will be able in Moscow to see Auntie and Agafya, and to tell them all the horror of my present position. You can speak with complete openness to Agafya, but spare dear auntie. You will know how to do that. You can't think how wretched I was yesterday and this morning, wondering how I could write them that dreadful letter, for one can never tell such things in a letter. Now it will be easy for me to write, for you will see them and explain everything. Oh, how glad I am! But I am only glad of that, believe me. Of course, no one can take your place. I will run at once to write the letter." She finished suddenly, and took a step, as though to go out of the room. "And what about Alyosha and his opinion, which you were so desperately anxious to hear?" cried Madame Holikov. There was a sarcastic, angry note in her voice. "I had not forgotten that," cried Katerina Ivanovna, coming to a sudden standstill. "And why are you so antagonistic at such a moment?" she added, with warm and bitter reproachfulness. "What I said, I repeat. I must have his opinion. More than that, I must have his decision. As he says, so it shall be. You see how anxious I am for your words, Alexey Fyodorovitch. But what's the matter?" I couldn't have believed it. I can't understand it," Alyosha cried suddenly, in distress. "He is going to Moscow, and you cry out that you are glad. You said that on purpose. And you begin explaining that you are not glad of that, but sorry to be losing a friend. But that was acting too. You were playing a part, as in a theatre." "In a theatre? What do you mean?" exclaimed Katerina Ivanovna, profoundly astonished, flushing crimson and frowning. "Though you assure him you are sorry to lose a friend in him, you persist in telling him to his face that it's fortunate he is going," said Alyosha breathlessly. He was standing at the table and did not sit down. "What are you talking about? I don't understand." "I don't understand myself. I seem to see in a flash. I know I am not saying it properly, but I'll say it all the same," Alyosha went on in the same shaking and broken voice. "What I see is that perhaps you didn't love Dmitri at all, and never have, from the beginning, and Dmitri, too, has never loved you, and only esteems you. I really don't know how I dare to say all this, but somebody must tell the truth, for nobody here will tell the truth." "What truth?" cried Katerina Ivanovna, and there was an hysterical ring in her voice. "I'll tell you," Alyosha went on, with desperate haste, as though he were jumping from the top of a house. "Call Dmitri. I will fetch him, and let him come here, and take your hand, and take Ivan's, and join your hands. For you're torturing Ivan simply because you love him, and torturing him because you love Dmitri through self-laceration, with an unreal love, because you've persuaded yourself." Alyosha broke off and was silent. You are a little religious idiot, that's what you are," Katerina Ivanovna snapped. Her face was white, and her lips were moving with anger. Ivan suddenly laughed and got up. His hat was in his hands. "You are mistaken, my good Alyosha," he said, with an expression Alyosha had never seen in his face before, an expression of youthful sincerity and strong, irresistible, frank feeling. "Katerina Ivanovna has never cared for me. She has known all the time that I cared for her, though I never said a word of my love to her. She knew, but she didn't care for me. I have never been her friend either, not for one moment. She is too proud to need my friendship. She kept me at her side as a means of revenge. She revenged with me and on me all the insults which she had been continually receiving from Dmitri ever since their first meeting. For even that first meeting has rankled in her heart an insult. That's what her heart is like, She has talked to me of nothing but her love for him. I am going now. But believe me, Katerina Ivanovna, you really love him, and the more he insults you, the more you love him. That's your laceration. You love him just as he is. You love him for insulting you. If he reformed, you'd give him up at once and cease to love him. But you need him so as to contemplate continually your heroic fidelity and to reproach him for infidelity. And it all comes from your pride. Oh, there's a great deal of humiliation and self-abasement about it, but it all comes from pride. I am too young, and I've loved you too much. I know that I ought not to say this, that it would be more dignified on my part simply to leave you, and it would be less offensive for you. But I am going far away, and shall never come back. It is forever. I don't want to sit beside a laceration, but I don't know how to speak now. I've said everything. Goodbye, Katerina Ivanovna. You can't be angry with me, for I am 100 times more severely punished than you, if only by the fact that I shall never see you again. Goodbye. I don't want your hand. You have tortured me too deliberately for me to be able to forgive you at this moment. I shall forgive you later, but now I don't want your hand. Den denk dame, beggar ik nicht. Translator's note. Thank you, madame. I want nothing. He added with a forced smile, showing, however, that he could read Schiller, and read him till he knew him by heart, which Alyosha would never have believed. He went out of the room without saying good-bye even to his hostess, Madame Holocaust. Alyosha clasped his hands. "Ivan!" he cried desperately after him. "Come back, Ivan!" "No, nothing will induce him to come back now," he cried again, regretfully realizing it. "But it's my fault, my fault. I began it." Ivan spoke angrily, wrongly, unjustly and angrily. "He must come back here. Come back!" Alyosha kept exclaiming frantically. Katerina Ivanovna went suddenly into the next room. "You have done no harm. You behaved beautifully, like an angel," Madame Holocaust whispered rapidly and ecstatically to Alyosha. "I will do my utmost to prevent Ivan Fyodorovitch from going." Her face beamed with delight, to the great distress of Alyosha, but Katerina Ivanovna suddenly returned. She had 200-ruble notes in her hand. "I have a great favor to ask of you, Alexey Fyodorovitch," she began, addressing Alyosha with an apparently calm and even voice, as though nothing had happened. "A week? Yes, I think it was a week ago, Dmitri Fyodorovitch was guilty of a hasty and unjust action, a very ugly action. There was a low tavern here, and in it he met that discharged officer, that captain, whom your father used to employ in some business. Dmitri Fyodorovitch somehow lost his temper with this captain, seized him by the beard, and dragged him out into the street, and for some distance along it, in that insulting fashion, and I am told that his son, a boy, quite a child, who is at the school here, saw it, and ran beside them crying and begging for his father, appealing to everyone to defend him, while everyone laughed. You must forgive me, Alexey Fyodorovitch. I cannot think without indignation of that disgraceful action of his, one of those actions of which only Dmitri Fyodorovitch would be capable in his anger and in his passions. I can't describe it even. I can't find my words. I've made inquiries about his victim, and find he is quite a poor man. His name is Snegorov. He did something wrong in the army and was discharged. I can't tell you what. And now he is sunk into terrible destitution, with his family, an unhappy family of sick children, and, I believe, an insane wife. He has been living here a long time. He used to work as a copying clerk, but now he is getting nothing. I thought if you... that is, I thought... I don't know. I am so confused, you see. I wanted to ask you, my dear Alexey Fyodorovitch, to go to him, to find some excuse to go to them. I mean, to that captain. Oh, goodness, how badly I explain it. And delicately, carefully, as only you know how to. Alyosha blushed. Manage to give him this assistance, these 200 rubles. He will be sure to take it. I mean, persuade him to take it. Or rather, what do I mean? You see, it's not by way of compensation to prevent him from taking proceedings, for I believe he meant to, but simply a token of sympathy, of a desire to assist him from me, Dmitri Fyodorovitch's betrothed, not from himself. But you know, I would go myself, but you'll know how to do it ever so much better. He lives in Lake Street, in the house of a woman called Kalimokov. For God's sake, Alexey Fyodorovitch, do it for me. And now I am rather tired. Good-bye." She turned and disappeared behind the portiere so quickly that Alyosha had not time to utter a word, though he wanted to speak. He longed to beg her pardon, to blame himself, to say something, for his heart was full and he could not bear to go out of the room without it. But Madame Hohlakov took him by the hand and drew him along with her. In the hall she stopped him again, as before. She is proud. She is struggling with herself, but kind, charming, generous, she exclaimed in a half-whisper. "Oh, how I love her! Especially sometimes, and how glad I am again of everything. Dear Alexey Fyodorovitch, you don't know, but I must tell you that we all, both her aunts, I and all of us, Lize, even have been hoping and praying for nothing for the last month but that she may give up your favorite Dmitri, who takes no notice of her and does not care for her, and may marry Ivan Fyodorovitch, such an excellent and cultivated young man, who loves her more than anything in the world. We are in a regular plot to bring it about, and I am even staying on here, perhaps, on that account." "But she has been crying! She has been wounded again!" cried Alyosha. "Never trust a woman's tears, Alexey Fyodorovitch. I am never for a woman in such cases. I am always on the side of the men." "Mamma, you are spoiling him!" Liza's little voice cried from behind the door. "No, it was all my fault. I am horribly to blame," Alyosha repeated, unconsoled, hiding his face in his hands in an agony of remorse for his indiscretion. "Quite the contrary. You behaved like an angel, like an angel. I am ready to say so 1,000 times over." "Mamma, how has he behaved like an angel?" Lise's voice was heard again. "I somehow fancied all at once," Alyosha went on, as though he had not heard Lise, "that she loved Ivan, and so I said that stupid thing. What will happen now?" "To whom? To whom?" cried Lise. "Mamma, you really want to be the death of me. I ask you, and you don't answer." At that moment the maid ran in. "Katerina Ivanovna is ill. She is crying, struggling, hysterics." "What is the matter?" cried Lise, in a tone of real anxiety. "Mamma, I shall be having hysterics and not she." "Lise, for mercy's sake, don't scream. Don't persecute me. At your age, one can't know everything that grown-up people know. I'll come and tell you everything you ought to know. Oh, mercy on us! I am coming. Hysterics is a good sign, Alexey Fyodorovitch. It's an excellent thing that she is hysterical. That's just as it ought to be. In such cases I am always against the woman, against all these feminine tears and hysterics. Run and say, Yulia, that I'll fly to her, As for Ivan Fyodorovitch's going away like that, it's her own fault. But he won't go away. Lise, for mercy's sake, don't scream. Oh, yes, you are not screaming. It's I am screaming. Forgive your mamma. But I am delighted, delighted, delighted. Did you notice, Alexey Fyodorovitch, how young Ivan Fyodorovitch was just now when he went out? When he said all that and went out, I thought he was so learned, such a savant, and all of a sudden he behaved so warmly, openly, and youthfully, with such youthful inexperience, and it was all so fine, like you, and the way he repeated that German verse, it was just like you. But I must fly, I must fly. Alexey Fyodorovitch, make haste to carry out her commission, and then make haste back. Lise, do you want anything now? For mercy's sake, don't keep Alexey Fyodorovitch a minute. He will come back to you at once. Madame Holikov at last ran off. Before leaving, Alyosha would have opened the door to see Lise. On no account, cried Lise. On no account now. Speak through the door. How have you come to be an angel? That's the only thing I want to know. For an awful piece of stupidity, Lise. Good-bye. Don't dare go away like that, Lise was beginning. Lise, I have a real sorrow. I'll be back directly, but I have a great, great sorrow. And he ran out of the room. End of chapter 5 of book 4. Recording by Rachel Steely. www.rachelsteely.com.
Chapter 6 of The Brothers Karamazov. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoyevsky. Translated by Constance Garnett. Book 4, Chapter 6. A Laceration in the Cottage. He certainly was really grieved in a way he had seldom been before. He had rushed in like a fool, and meddled in what? In a love affair. But what do I know about it? What can I tell about such things? He repeated to himself for the 100th time, flushing crimson. Oh, being ashamed would be nothing. Shame is only the punishment I deserve. The trouble is, I shall certainly have caused more unhappiness, and Father Zosima sent me to reconcile and bring them together. Is this the way to bring them together? Then he suddenly remembered how he had tried to join their hands, and he felt fearfully ashamed again. Though I acted quite sincerely, I must be more sensible in the future, he concluded suddenly, and did not even smile at his conclusion. Katerina Ivanovna's commission took him to Lake Street, and his brother Dmitri lived close by, in a turning out of Lake Street. Alyosha decided to go to him in any case before going to the captain, though he had a presentiment that he would not find his brother. He suspected that he would intentionally keep out of his way now, but he must find him anyhow. Time was passing. The thought of his dying elder had not left Alyosha for 1 minute from the time he set off from the monastery. There was one point which interested him particularly about Katerina Ivanovna's commission, when she had mentioned the captain's son, the little schoolboy who had run beside his father crying. The idea had at once struck Alyosha that this must be the schoolboy who had bitten his finger when he, Alyosha, asked him what he had done to hurt him. Now Alyosha felt practically certain of this, though he could not have said why. Thinking of another subject was a relief, and he resolved to think no more about the mischief he had done, and not to torture himself with remorse, but to do what he had to do, let come what would. At that thought he was completely comforted. Turning to the street where Dmitri lodged, he felt hungry, and taking out of his pocket the roll he had brought from his father's, he ate it. It made him feel stronger. Dmitri was not at home. The people of the house, an old cabinet maker, his son, and his old wife, looked with positive suspicion at Alyosha. "He hasn't slept here for the last 3 nights. Maybe he has gone away," the old man said, in answer to Alyosha's persistent inquiries. Alyosha saw that he was answering in accordance with instructions. When he asked whether he were not at Grushenka's, or in hiding at Foma's, Alyosha spoke so freely, on purpose. All 3 looked at him in alarm. "They are fond of him, they are doing their best for him," thought Alyosha. "That's good." At last he found the house in Lake Street. It was a decrepit little house, sunk on one side, with 3 windows looking into the street, and with a muddy yard in the middle of which stood a solitary cow. He crossed the yard, and found the door opening into the passage. On the left of the passage lived the old woman of the house with her old daughter. Both seemed to be deaf. In answer to his repeated inquiry for the captain, one of them at last understood that he was asking for their lodgers, and pointed to a door across the passage. The captain's lodging turned out to be a simple cottage room. Alyosha had his hand on the iron latch to open the door when he was struck by a strange hush within. Yet he knew from Katerina Ivanovna's words that the man had a family. "Either they are all asleep, or perhaps they have heard me coming and are waiting for me to open the door. I'd better knock first," and he knocked. An answer came, but not at once, after an interval of perhaps 10 seconds. "Who's there?" shouted someone in a loud and very angry voice. Then Alyosha opened the door and crossed the threshold. He found himself in a regular peasant's room. Though it was large, it was cumbered up with domestic belongings of all sorts, and there were several people in it. On the left was a large Russian stove. From the stove to the window on the left there was a string running across the room, and on it there were rags hanging. There was a bedstead against the wall on each side, right and left, covered with knitted quilts. On the one on the left was a pyramid of 4 print-covered pillows, each smaller than the one beneath. On the other there was only one very small pillow. The opposite corner was screened off by a curtain or a sheet hung on a string. Behind this curtain could be seen a bed made up on a bench and a chair. The rough square table of plain wood had been moved into the middle window. The 3 windows, which consisted of 4 tiny greenish mildewy panes, gave little light and were close shut, so that the room was not very light and rather stuffy. On the table was a frying pan with the remains of some fried eggs, a half-eaten piece of bread, and a small bottle with a few drops of vodka. A woman of genteel appearance, wearing a cotton gown, was sitting on a chair by the bed on the left. Her face was thin and yellow, and her sunken cheeks betrayed at the first glance that she was ill. But what struck Alyosha most was the expression in the poor woman's eyes, a look of surprised inquiry and yet of haughty pride. And while he was talking to her husband, her big brown eyes moved from one speaker to the other with the same haughty and questioning expression. Beside her at the window stood a young girl, rather plain, with scanty reddish hair, poorly but very neatly dressed. She looked disdainfully at Alyosha as he came in. Beside the other bed was sitting another female figure. She was a very sad sight, a young girl of about 20, but hunchback and crippled, with withered legs, as Alyosha was told afterwards. Her crutches stood in the corner close by. The strikingly beautiful and gentle eyes of this poor girl looked with mild serenity at Alyosha. A man of 45 was sitting at the table, finishing the fried eggs. He was spare, small, and weakly built. He had reddish hair and a scanty, light-colored beard, very much like a wisp of tow. This comparison and the phrase, "a wisp of tow," flashed at once into Alyosha's mind for some reason. He remembered it afterwards. It was obviously this gentleman who had shouted to him, as there was no other man in the room. But when Alyosha went in, he leapt up from the bench on which he was sitting, and, hastily wiping his mouth with a ragged napkin, darted up to Alyosha. "It's a monk come to beg for the monastery. A nice place to come to," the girl standing in the left corner said aloud. The man spun round instantly towards her and answered her in an excited and breaking voice. "No, Varvara, you are wrong. Allow me to ask," he turned again to Alyosha, "what has brought you to our retreat?" Alyosha looked attentively at him. It was the first time he had seen him. There was something angular, flurried, and irritable about him. Though he had obviously just been drinking, he was not drunk. There was an extraordinary impudence in his expression, and yet, strange to say, at the same time, there was fear. He looked like a man who had long been kept in subjection and had submitted to it, and now had suddenly turned and was trying to assert himself. Or, better still, like a man who wants dreadfully to hit you but is horribly afraid you will hit him. In his words and in the intonation of his shrill voice there was a sort of crazy humor, at times spiteful and at times cringing, and continually shifting from one tone to another. The question about our retreat he had asked, as it were, quivering all over, rolling his eyes, and skipping up so close to Alyosha that he instinctively drew back a step. He was dressed in a very shabby dark cotton coat, patched and spotted. He wore checked trousers of an extremely light color, long out of fashion, and of very thin material. They were so crumpled and so short that he looked as though he had grown out of them like a boy. "I am Alexei Karamazov," Alyosha began in reply. "I quite understand that, sir," the gentleman snapped out at once to assure him that he knew who he was already. "I am Captain Snegiryov, sir. But I am still desirous to know precisely what has led you—" "Oh, I've come for nothing special. I wanted to have a word with you, if only you'll allow me." "In that case, here is a chair, sir. Kindly be seated." That's what they used to say in the old comedies, "Kindly be seated." And with a rapid gesture he seized an empty chair, it was a rough wooden chair, not upholstered, and set it for him in the middle of the room. Then, taking another similar chair for himself, he sat down facing Alyosha, so close to him that their knees almost touched. "Nikolai Ilyich Snegiryov, sir, formerly a captain in the Russian infantry, put to shame for his vices, but still a captain, though I might not be one now for the way I talk. For the last half of my life I've learned to say 'sir.' It's a word you use when you've come down in the world." "That's very true," smiled Alyosha. "But is it used involuntarily or on purpose?" "As God's above, it's involuntary, but I usen't to use it. I didn't use the word 'sir' all my life, but as soon as I sank into low water I began to say 'sir.' It's the work of a higher power. I see you are interested in contemporary questions, but how can I have excited your curiosity, living as I do, in surroundings impossible for the exercise of hospitality?" "I've come about that business." "About what business?" the captain interrupted impatiently. "About your meeting with my brother Dmitri Fyodorovitch," Alyosha blurted out awkwardly. "What meeting, sir? You don't mean that meeting? About my wisp of tow, then?" He moved closer so that his knees positively knocked against Alyosha. His lips were strangely compressed like a thread. "What wisp of tow?" muttered Alyosha. "He has come to complain of me, father," cried a voice familiar to Alyosha, the voice of the schoolboy, from behind the curtain. "I bit his finger just now." The curtain was pulled, and Alyosha saw his assailant, lying on a little bed made up on the bench and the chair in the corner under the icons. The boy lay covered by his coat and an old wadded quilt. He was evidently unwell, and judging by his glittering eyes, he was in a fever. He looked at Alyosha without fear, as though he felt he was at home and could not be touched. "What? Did he bite your finger?" The captain jumped up from his chair. "Was it your finger he bit?" "Yes, he was throwing stones with other schoolboys. There were 6 of them against him alone. I went up to him, and he threw a stone at me, and then another at my head. I asked him what I had done to him, and then he rushed at me and bit my finger badly. I don't know why." "I'll thrash him, sir, at once, this minute." The captain jumped up from his seat. "But I am not complaining at all. I am simply telling you. I don't want him to be thrashed. Besides, he seems ill." "And do you suppose that I'd thrash him? That I'd take my Ilusha and thrash him before you for your satisfaction? Would you like it done at once, sir?" said the captain, suddenly turning to Alyosha, as though he were going to attack him. "I am sorry about your finger, sir, but instead of thrashing Ilusha, would you like me to chop off my 4 fingers with this knife here before your eyes to satisfy your just wrath? I should think 4 fingers would be enough to satisfy your thirst for vengeance. You won't ask for the 5th one, too?" He stopped short with a catch in his throat. Every feature in his face was twitching and working. He looked extremely defiant. He was in a sort of frenzy. "I think I understand it all now," said Alyosha gently and sorrowfully, still keeping his seat. "So your boy is a good boy. He loves his father, and he attacked me as the brother of your assailant. Now I understand it," he repeated thoughtfully. "But my brother, Dmitri Fyodorovitch, regrets his action. I know that. And if only it is possible for him to come to you, or better still, to meet you in that same place, he will ask for your forgiveness before everyone if you wish it." "After pulling out my beard, you mean? He will ask my forgiveness? And he thinks that will be a satisfactory finish, doesn't he?" "Oh no, on the contrary, he will do anything you like, and in any way you like." "So if I were to ask His Highness to go down on his knees before me in that very tavern, the Metropolis it's called, or in the marketplace, he would do it?" "Yes, he would even go down on his knees." "You've pierced me to the heart, sir. Touched me to tears and pierced me to the heart. I am only too sensible of your brother's generosity. Allow me to introduce my family, my 2 daughters and my son, my litter. If I die, who will care for them? And while I live, who but they will care for a wretch like me? That's a great thing the Lord has ordained for every man of my sort, sir, for there must be someone able to love even a man like me." "Ah, that's perfectly true," exclaimed Alyosha. "Oh, do leave off playing the fool. Some idiot comes in, and you put us to shame," cried the girl by the window, suddenly turning to her father with a disdainful and contemptuous air. "Wait a little, Varvara," cried her father, speaking peremptorily, but looking at them quite approvingly. "That's her character," he said, addressing Alyosha again. "And in all nature there was naught that could find favour in his eyes. Or rather in the feminine, that would find favour in her eyes. But now let me present you to my wife, Arina Petrovna. She is crippled. She is 43. She can move, but very little. She is of humble origin. Arina Petrovna, compose your countenance. This is Alexey Fyodorovitch Karamazov. Get up, Alexey Fyodorovitch." He took him by the hand and with unexpected force pulled him up. "You must stand up to be introduced to a lady. It's not the Karamazov, mamma, who, etc., but his brother, radiant with modest virtues. Come, Arina Petrovna, come, mamma. First your hand to be kissed." And he kissed his wife's hand respectfully, and even tenderly. The girl at the window turned her back indignantly on the scene. An expression of extraordinary cordiality came over the haughty, inquiring face of the woman. "Good morning. Sit down, Mr. Chernomazov," she said. "Karamazov, mamma, Karamazov. We are of humble origin," he whispered again. Well, Karamazov, or whatever it is, but I always think of Chernomazov. Sit down. Why has he pulled you up? He calls me crippled, but I am not. Only my legs are swollen like barrels, and I am shriveled up myself. Once I used to be so fat, but now it's as though I had swallowed a needle. We are of humble origin, the captain muttered again. Oh, father, father, the hunchback girl, who had till then been silent on her chair, said suddenly, and she hid her eyes in the handkerchief. Buffoon, blurted out the girl at the window. Have you heard our news? Said the mother, pointing at her daughters. It's like clouds coming over. The clouds pass and we have music again. When we were with the army, we used to have many such guests. I don't mean to make any comparisons. Everyone to their taste. The deacon's wife used to come and say, Alexander Alexandrovitch is a man of the noblest heart, but Nastasia Petrovna, she would say, is of the brood of hell. Well, I said, that's a matter of taste. But you are a little spitfire, and you want keeping in your place, says she. You black sword, said I. Who asked you to teach me? But my breath, says she, is clean, and yours is unclean. You ask all the officers whether my breath is unclean, and ever since then I had it in my mind. Not long ago I was sitting here as I am now, when I saw that very general come in who came here for Easter, and I asked him, Your Excellency, said I, can a lady's breath be unpleasant? Yes, he answered. You ought to open a window pane, or open the door, for the air is not fresh here. And they go on like that. And what is my breath to them? The dead smell worse still. I won't spoil the air, said I. I'll order some slippers, and I'll go away. My darlings, don't blame your own mother. Nikolai Ilyich, how is it I can't please you? There's only Irusha, who comes home from school and loves me. Yesterday he brought me an apple. Forgive your own mother. Forgive a poor, lonely creature. Why has my breath become so unpleasant to you? And the poor mad woman broke into sobs, and tears streamed down her cheeks. The captain rushed up to her. Mamma, mamma, my dear, give over. You are not lonely. Everyone loves you. Everyone adores you. He began kissing both her hands again, and tenderly stroking her face. Taking the dinner napkin, he began wiping away her tears. Alyosha fancied that he too had tears in his eyes. There, you see, you hear? He turned with a sort of fury to Alyosha, pointing to the poor imbecile. I see and hear, muttered Alyosha. Father, father, how can you? With him! Let him alone! Cried the boy, sitting up in his bed and gazing at his father with glowing eyes. Do give over fooling, showing off your silly antics which never lead to anything, shouted Varvara, stamping her foot with passion. Your anger is quite just this time, Varvara, and I'll make haste to satisfy you. Come, put on your cap, Alexey Fyodorovitch, and I'll put on mine. We will go out. I have a word to say to you in earnest, but not within these walls. This girl sitting here is my daughter Nina. I forgot to introduce her to you. She is a heavenly angel incarnate, who has flown down to us mortals, if you can understand. There he is, shaking all over, as though he is in convulsions, Varvara went on indignantly. And there, stamping her foot at me and calling me a fool just now, she is a heavenly angel incarnate too, and she has good reason to call me so. Come along, Alexey Fyodorovitch, we must make an end. And, snatching Alyosha's hand, he drew him out of the room into the street. End of Chapter 6, Book 4.